girls, I'm here today to film a monthly TBR. So I don't do these very often because I'm not very good at sticking to them, but I think this month I will be quite good at sticking to it because some of these books I sort of have to read because they're from the library and there's other people waiting in a queue, so I don't read them this month. I'll have to like reserve them again and wait quite a while, which I don't want to do, and also I'm just really excited about them. And then I'm also doing a big challenge this year to try and get my TBR to, well, I say 0 because that sounds good, but like I'd be happy with it being at about 5 books because, like, you know, I'm going to let myself off. I started the year with 67 unread books on my TBR. So, sort of a couple of things that I'm trying to do this month. I've been pretty rubbish in that I've been buying new books and not reading them the month I've been buying them, which was my intention because I didn't want any books to sort of sit on my TBR for a while. And then the other thing is that I've not been getting through my physical TBR very well because I've been focusing so much on library books. So I want to try and use April as a month to like correct the damage I've done in the last 3 months so that by the time I get through the first third of the year, I'm on track where I'm supposed to be with my physical TBR, and I'll talk about that as we go. But first I'm going to mention a few library books which like don't help me with that goal at all, and are just books that I need to read in order to return them. Now, if I was going to talk about every single book I would like to get to this month, it would be about 30 books, which is obviously insane. I think I'm talking about around 20, but there are obviously others I'd like to get to, particularly audiobooks I'm not really going to mention here, but I do have some in mind that I would like to read for Aussie April that I found on Script I'm really excited about. But yeah, I have 4 library books out at the moment which are all due back this month, some of them in the first week, so I need to get a move on. But I also have already 8 books on the reservation shelf waiting for me to go collect, and I think it's possible that 2 of them will only let me borrow them for 3 weeks, so I'll probably have to read them in a month as well, but I'm not 100% sure of that, so I'm not going to mention those titles either. But just know there is at least 4 library books I need to get to, possibly a couple more. So 2 of these happen to be from the Woman's Prize long list. So one of them is Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Kupersmith. I really liked the sound of this book when it first came out, I think last year in hardback, but I was a little bit tentative because there's an element of this book that I wasn't sure about, in that I love stories that are set across different locations and different time periods, which is precisely what this book is. It follows the teenage daughter of a wealthy Vietnamese family in 1986 Vietnam, and then it also follows a young unhappy Vietnamese American woman in 2011 who disappears again in Vietnam, and these stories are sort of linked. I love the premise of that, and these are the sort of books I really enjoy, but I'd heard the writing style could at times be a little bit, I don't know how to word this, like gross, and I've said this plenty of times on the channel, but I always feel the need to repeat it. In real life, vulgarity is like, I'm down for vulgarity, I'll discuss literally anything. But what I don't like is when an author is like trying to make you be disgusted by like bodily functions, because it just feels a bit like unkind. Like, when I say I'm okay with vulgarity, what I mean is I don't think there's any shame or embarrassment that people should feel from discussing their bodies. So yeah, I'm always a bit unsure when I hear people say, oh, it's a bit gross, because I'm like, is it gross in just like an open and honest way, or is it gross in like a I'm trying to gross you out way? Hence why I didn't buy this book, and I requested it at the library, and then of course it's now been longlisted for the Women's Prize, and so lots of people are waiting in the queue behind me, so need to get to this one in the first week. And then I hadn't heard of this one, and I saw it on the Women's Prize long list, and I'm not intending to read the whole long list because I have problems with the Women's Prize, but also just, you know, a lot of them I'm not interested in. But this sounded like one I would be interested in, and that's Careless by Kirsty. I've heard some people say this is YA. My library have categorised it as adult fiction, so I'm not quite sure, but it is about a young girl who's going through the foster care system who realises she's pregnant and she's not really sure what to do and who to turn to. And yeah, I just feel like this sounds like maybe like adult Jacqueline Wilson, which I'm always down for, and I think this will probably be like a super quick read that maybe I could read in like one day at the weekend. So again, I'm gonna pick that one up soon. And then these other 2 are just 2 new releases I was really excited about, one of which I asked my library to buy and they kindly did, which is very exciting, and I love when they do that. And it is No Land to Light On by Yara, Zgheib, I think that's how you say their name. And I mentioned this in my most anticipated releases of the year, and yeah, just very excited to get to it. So this is about a young Syrian couple who are recently married, and this takes place during when the travel ban was put in place in the US by Trump, and we follow them as they're sort of split up because of that travel ban. So the wife, who is heavily pregnant, is in Boston, and her partner goes back to Jordan to bury his father, and then he can't get back through the airport to his wife, and it's about the repercussions of that following this particular couple. And it says this is sort of reminiscent of An American Marriage, which I absolutely adored, so I'm hoping to really enjoy this one. And then this other one wasn't on my most anticipated releases because I hadn't heard of it, and then I saw a couple of other people mention it and I thought that sounds intriguing, and that is Notes on an Execution by Danya, Kukafka. There you go, it's not a debut novel, which I thought it was. They have another book out, at least one. And yeah, so this sounds a little bit like a sort of crime thriller, but I think it's more maybe on the like literary general fiction end of that. We're following a man who is on death row, and he's scheduled to die in 12 hours for something he did to girls many years before, it doesn't specify. But we follow 3 women who are affected by this, one being his mother when she's 17, another being twin sister to his wife, as she sort of watches how he destroys her sister's life, and another being the detective who's like trying to investigate him. So I think we sort of go back to the past and follow these 3 women and how his life affects theirs. So yeah, I found that really intriguing, and I'm definitely going to read this one. So those are the library books. Like I said, there's a couple more, and there are a couple of fantasy books I would like to get to this month off my fantasy TBR, which I'll link above. I'm doing quite well with that, so I want to keep on track. So this month I've requested at the library The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri, I think, and I'm hoping that should come in the next few days, so I really want to read it. And then I'm also going to buy, because the library don't have it in stock, The Unbroken by Clarke, so I'm aiming to read both of those this month as well. So then another thing I'm focused on, like I said, is reducing my TBR. I think at the moment I'm not on track, basically, I'm behind. I worked out at the start of the year that if I read 5 books a month, I'd end up with 7 books left on my TBR, which I'm happy with. And I haven't read 5 books a month, basically. I'm currently at, I can tell you actually how many unread books I currently have, because I have a Goodreads shelf for it. So I have 54 unread books, which I think means I need to read 7. Yeah, if I read 7 this month, I think that means I'll be back on track to get to just like 5 at the end of the year. So I could just read 5 instead of 7, but whatever. So I thought I would choose a couple from my 5-star prediction list, because I'm being a bit rubbish at working my way through that. So I have 4 off that list. If you want to hear more details about these books, I will link my 5-star predictions video above. So I have 2 fiction. One of those is Sleepovers by Ashleigh Bryant Phillips. This is a short story collection, and I really wanted to try and read more short story collections this year, and I was doing well in the first 2 months, but I haven't read any in March. So I really want to get to this, and ideally I'd like to get to another short story collection in March, but I don't think it's possible with the amount of other books I have, but at least this one, and I'm hoping to love it. And then the novel I have is Butter, Honey, Pig Bread by Francesca Ekwuyasi. I love the sound of this. I found it on audio on Zgheib, so I think I'm going to listen and read along, because this is like super poetic prose, so I think it might work better hearing somebody narrate it. So yeah, going to do that. And then I have 2 non-fiction books. These are both memoir. One of them is Golem Girl. Is it Golem or Golem? Golem Girl by Riva. Like I said, this is a memoir. This is quite a chunky one, but based on, like, I had a little read of the first few pages, and I think this seems super readable, so I think I'll get through this one quite quickly, and I've heard excellent things about it. And the other one is sort of a memoir in personal essays, and that is Girlhood by Melissa Phoebos. I bought this last year, convinced I'm going to absolutely adore it. Still haven't read it, don't know why. So that is ridiculous. And then I've just quickly picked 2 others off my sort of TBR books I've had since before the start of this year. Albert has just come to say hello, so if you can hear little noises, that is him. And one of them is A Song of Flight by Juliet. This is the 3rd book in her newest series, which is the Warrior Bard trilogy. And I gave both the previous books 3 stars, so I haven't felt super pulled to pick this one up. but I want to start a new Juliet Marillion series this year, and I don't want to like start a new one without having finished one I'm currently reading. So I'm going to wrap this series up. Like, it'll be a really easy read. It just it's not super exciting because I don't think I'm going to love it, which is a real shame. But they're quite cosy reads, so I will pick this up at some point throughout the month. And then another one that is the only Australian book I have on my TBR for Aussie April. The only one I have physically is a young adult book called Metal Fish Falling Snow by Kath Moore. I love the sound of this. It's about a young girl whose mother dies, and she is black and her mother's boyfriend is white, and he has to sort of drive her across Australia to take her to meet her family who she's never known. And it's about identity and grief and sort of the connection she makes with her mother's boyfriend, and I've heard really great things about it, and I think this will be a super quick read because it's quite short and it's, like I said, a YA book. So there's those, and then I have one other non-fiction I've put on my list. As well as Aussie April, it is the Disability Readathon month, so I also have a couple of other audiobooks I'd like to read for that, and I don't think I mentioned, but this book is about the author's experience with growing up with spina bifida, so this will be a good one for the Disability Readathon. But also I have Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice by, I've looked up how to say this author's name before, but I didn't do that today, which is annoying. So you can read it there, I'm not going to say it because I'll just butcher it. But again, I found this one on audio, so I think I will read this collection of essays and listen along, because I don't know how complicated this is going to be, and I sometimes feel that when things are complicated I like to listen along because then I like pick up on the intonations more, but then I also want to read it because I understand things better when I'm reading them, so like pairing the two seems to work well. So I think I will do that this month. And then basically I have, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 11 books that I've bought this year and haven't read yet. Now 5 of them I did buy this month, so I'm not doing too badly. But yeah, like, I don't want this to happen. I want to read a book within sort of, you know, a few weeks of buying it, because if not, these are just going to add to the physical TBR. So 2 I have bought in January and still haven't read, which has annoyed me, so definitely want to get to these 2, is I Love You But I've Chosen Darkness by Clarke Watkins. It was sunnier in England, and it would have been perfect to read this because it got really warm, and now we've had a real cold spell and we're getting like sleet and stuff and it's really cold. So I think I'll wait until it's really warm again, because this is set in the Mojave Desert, so I think it's going to be like super hot, and I think it will work better on a sunny day. And then another one is This Is Vegan Propaganda and Other Lies the Meat Industry Tells You by Ed Winters. I just haven't found the right moment to pick this up, which is a stupid thing to say, because when is the right moment to read a book that's probably as depressing as this one? But I really want to support Ed because he's the reason Johnny and I went vegan when we found his videos, and I've heard this book is amazing. So there's that. Then these 4 books I picked up in February. I have mentioned all these books in a sort of goals check-in video where I do a goals check-in and a haul video, which I'll link above. So I won't go into a ton of detail here. But yeah, I've got these 4, 3 of which are non-fiction. So we have Yellowbird, Oil, Murder and a Woman's Search for Justice in Indian Country by Sierra Crane Murdoch. This is like a true crime book, but I'm really interested in the link between fracking and sexual violence, particularly against Indigenous women, and this book I think focuses on that, although I don't know if it specifically focuses on violence perpetuated against women, but I think that may be part of the discussion, so I'm keen to read that. Then I have another memoir, which is a beautiful cover, and that's Taste Like War by Grace M Cho, and it sounds absolutely brilliant. This was one of my most anticipated memoirs from last year, so I'm really happy to have a copy and obviously want to read it. And then I have a graphic non-fiction book, and that is The Waiting by Gendry Kim. This is translated, I think, by Janet Hong. Yes, Janet Hong. And I previously read Grass by her, which was a graphic non-fiction book. Incredibly sad, but really informative and really well delivered, I thought. So I wanted to support her and read her next book. And then we have The Strangers by Katharina Vermette, which is so beautiful. And I really want to read this. However, this is a companion novel to The Break by the same author. And The Break follows a family, but specifically follows the women in that family after sort of a horrific event of sexual violence is inflicted on the youngest member of that family, a teenage girl, and it sort of follows the sort of ripple effects on the family and the inherited trauma they have from the awful things that colonisers have done to them. And this, I understand, is following the same family, and I feel like I remember a lot about this, but I don't remember like the names of people, and I think I'll get more out of this if I do remember the names. So I think I'm going to read both of these this month. I've always wanted to reread this one. It was a 5-star read, absolutely amazing. I wish more people would read it. It is really a difficult read. Definitely has triggering content to do with sexual assault, so do obviously keep away from it if you would find that difficult. But if not, I would highly recommend it. And because it is like super cold at the moment, I'm pretty sure both of these are set in Winnipeg. This one was set like during really heavy snow. I think these will suit this weather, so I think I'm going to try and prioritise these early in the month while the weather is still this bad. So there's those two. And then these other 5 I haven't mentioned before because I just bought them. Now I did buy them like right at the end of April, so like I've had like 5 days to have read them, and I've not been very well the last few days, so I have been working from home still, but then in the evenings I've literally just been watching YouTube and that's it. I've not done any reading. So I need to get back into shape for April. And these are the 5 books I picked up. Now, I was just going to buy these free non-fiction books. Basically, I just want to know everything. I think I've said this before. I find it entirely frustrating that I look back on what we learned at school and I think like, I remember in geography spending a whole term studying lakes and like how lakes and rivers are formed. And like, whilst we need to know that, I don't think we need to spend a whole term on it. Like, I still remember all these diagrams about how Oxbow, is it called Oxbow rivers? Oxbow lakes, how they were formed. Johnny and I were discussing this the other day, like the things we learn at school which like the majority of people never use again, like algebra for example. And there's all these things that we so clearly should know, especially I think as a country that were like the fucking worst at perpetuating these atrocities across the whole world. And we spent all this time learning about World War II, like we spent a lot of time learning about the D-Day landings at school. And again, I'm not saying that isn't important, but I don't think that much time needs to be spent on it. I have a complete unawareness from my school education of like anything to do with the countries we colonised, our involvement in the slave trade, like all these things. So I'm trying desperately to correct that, but there is just so much I want to know. So yeah, I can't do it all, and like, to be honest, if I wanted to, I'd probably just have to stop reading fiction entirely, which isn't what I want to do, but I do love non-fiction. So I read a couple of books in March, which I'll talk about in my March wrap-up, which touched on prison abolition. And that's something I 100% agree with, but I'd like to read like a full-length book on that, so I have a lot more information. And one that I was aware of is We Do This Till We Free Us, Abolitionist Organising and Transforming Justice by Mariame Kaba. So I picked this up. This is from Haymarket Books, who publish loads of excellent books on social justice. And it says, what if social transformation and liberation are not about waiting for someone else to come along and save us? What if ordinary people have the power to collectively free ourselves? In this timely collection of essays and interviews, Mariame Kaba reflects on the deep work of abolition and transformative political struggle. So yeah, definitely going to read this month. It's not too long a book, and a lot of these essays and interviews are quite short, so they'll be quite easy to get through. So yeah, really want to learn more from this. And then this next book is a book I've been interested in since it came out. It hasn't been published in the UK. I found it on audio, but it wasn't narrated by the author, which is something I'm always a bit like unsure about when it's personal essays. But I listened to part of the first essay and loved it, and just thought, you know what, I'm going to just buy myself a copy. And that is White Magic. This is an essay collection by Elisa Washuta. And Elisa Washuta, does it say? Yes, it should say. She's a member of the Cowlitz Indian tribe, and she is a non-fiction writer. And it says, in this collection of intertwined essays, she writes about land, heartbreak and colonisation, about life without the escape hatch of intoxication, and about how she became a powerful witch. And this focuses on the sort of appropriation of sort of magic, spiritual things that are part of a lot of native belief systems. For example, how like you can order dream catchers now from like Urban Outfitters, and most white people would just have no notion that that's like a pretty fucked up thing to be doing. And so yeah, she discusses this, and like I said, I absolutely loved her voice when I started listening, so 100% want to read this. It's quite chunky, but I feel like this could be a 5-star read. And then I have read quite a few books now about the history of Indigenous people in both the United States and Canada, as they are now called. And I just want to learn way more, and whenever I read certain books I'll be like, okay, that's interesting, but like I think it's missing this context. And one thing I think I am missing perhaps is the context that focuses more on women. So I was hoping, because this is written by a woman, it will have that. And that is An Indigenous People's History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar-Ortiz. I know that this publisher, who are Beacon Press, have a few of these from different perspectives. The one I want to get to next is An African American Woman's History of the United States. So yeah, I want to read this one first. And yeah, I always want to learn more. I'm always desperately annoyed with myself that I can't like retain every single thing I read, which is obviously impossible. But I'm hoping that just by continuing to read these books, which sometimes touch on the same topic, but sometimes maybe discuss it in a different context, that it will make me retain all this information. And when I've looked into books that are about sort of the history of Indigenous people in the US, this is one that people keep highlighting as like a really incredible one to read, so I really want to get to that. And then my plan was to just buy those, okay, because I was like, other than that I've got loads of novels, I don't need to buy anything. And then I went in Waterstones on Mother's Day with my mum, and we went out for lunch and we were like, should we just have a little look in Waterstones? And saw a couple of books that I actually had on my hold list at the library, and I saw them in person and I was like, do you know what? I know that in a few weeks' time these will be ready for me to borrow from the library. However, I think I'm really going to love them. So I will, like, if I read a library book and I absolutely adore it, I buy myself a copy to have, because I, one, want to support the author, but two, I am a rereader, so I like my collection to like have loads of books that I would one day like to reread, and obviously if I love a book, I definitely want to reread it. So I bought these two and I've cancelled my hold at the library, so now someone else will get them in front of me, which is good. The first one is Sundial by Katrina Ward. I'm not sure if that's how you say her name, I should have double checked. I read The Last House on Needless Street last year and I absolutely adored her writing style. I thought it was phenomenal, like the most like chilling and atmospherically dark book I've read in a long time, but I wasn't sure about the reveal at the end, which I won't talk about here because it's spoilery. I think this book will maybe like avoid the issues I had with The Last House on Needless Street. This is about a mother who has two daughters, and she started to be a bit suspicious of one of them and thinks she might be like a bit fucked up. And so she decided to take that daughter off to her childhood home of Sundial, which is a location in the Mojave Desert, which I think may have been like a cult. And so the book splits into the mother reminiscing about her childhood in this location and then the present day. And it says, Callie is afraid of her mother. Rob has begun to look at her strangely, to tell her secrets about her past that both disturb and excite her. And Callie is beginning to wonder if only one of them will leave Sundial alive. Ooh, isn't that brilliant? So with this and I Love You But I've Chosen Darkness, two books that are set in the Mojave Desert and involve cults. I mean, I think that'll be a fun pairing. And the other one, entirely different, is Violets by Alex Hyde. This is more of a risk because this is a debut novel, but I really absolutely love the sound of it, and I also think it's completely beautiful. So this is about two women called Violet, and this is set during World War II, and one of them, I think, loses her baby and can no longer conceive. And she's trying to sort of put her life back together. Her husband is deployed to Burma, and she's sort of left alone and is obviously really struggling. And then we're following another woman called Violet who's in a small Welsh town, and she's pregnant and she's not sure what to do. She's unmarried, and it's about the sort of link between these two women. And what I didn't realise until I saw it in person was that this book is sort of told, looks almost like poetry, So I think this will be a really quick read, but also super beautiful. And I know lots of people say, oh, I don't enjoy World War II fiction. I really do, and what I mean by that is I really enjoy reading about the people left behind. So I don't enjoy reading about like the people actually on the front line, like military tactics and things. But I think the position people who were left behind were put in was such a difficult one. Obviously it's difficult for everybody, but yeah, I find that fascinating, like how it changed women's roles, and yeah, it was such a period of change, so I always find it really interesting, and I'm hoping to love that one. So those are all the books I'm going to mention. As I said, there are there are a lot of audiobooks I'd also like to get to. Like I said, I think I will mainly focus on Aussie April and the Disability Redefined via my audiobooks. There are so many audiobooks I'm excited about at the moment that I have lined up, so we shall see. Ideally, I'd like to get to 20 books in April, because it would be great, because then I would like have helped my physical TBR and also got to the library books I'm excited about. But we shall see. We shall see. Let me know if you have any tips and tricks, and also let me know if there's any books you're more interested in hearing me talk about, so I can try and prioritise them, because, you know, I may not get to all of them. We shall see. Thanks for watching. Let me know what books you're planning on reading in April. I would love to know. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.